Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. I don't know about you, but I've officially had my fill of what has become an awful reality show-esque blow-by-blow account of how Unification Talks are panning out between the three champions, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker. It really is becoming a case of millionaires and their millionaire promoters behaving badly. The final straw for me was two things that I saw in the past couple of days, and another thing that had been kind of lingering with me since Anthony Joshua's recent Set the Record Straight interview, where he addressed a few issues such as Deontay Wilder calling him out and also splits for unification fights. So I'll link to that Anthony Joshua video at the end of this one if you wanted to catch up on that. But first, I'll take you back a week or so for some context, and I am condensing it here. There is a lot of ground to cover, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. And it kind of goes to how much of this situation has been out there. There is so much, and it's become so repetitive. But a week or so ago, I was naively starting to get a little optimistic that we might see some progress for an Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder unification fight. After Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn, he committed publicly on the Boxing Voice to sitting down with Wilder's manager Shelley Finkel while he was in New York for the Danny Jacobs fight. He promotes Jacobs now. And remember, Wilder had been relentlessly calling out Anthony Joshua for weeks by that point, saying he was scared, he didn't want that work, and all sorts of stuff. The pressure was really on Hearn and his fighter Anthony Joshua to respond to the increasing noise that Wilder was successfully generating among fans and the media, in particular after he knocked out Berminster Vern in exciting fashion. Then we had out of the woodwork Pops Joseph Parker and his promoter David Higgins, with a pointless news conference repeating what they'd already said publicly. They wanted a Joshua fight. We also heard again how many options Joseph Parker had available to him, but for the minute, he would be putting all that on hold as they tried to negotiate with Eddie Hearn and Joshua. But the catch was only if the money was right. And a 50-50 split had to be the starting point. And in the day or so after that, we actually heard they wanted a 40-60 split of all revenue. So not just the purse split, but everything. And they would hold the event and give Joshua 60% upside. And that would be a huge amount of money. So Anthony Joshua, he materializes out of the blue to address Wilder's callouts. And specifically, he spoke of likely having to overpay by twice or more to get the fights made with the American or the New Zealander. But he did say there was a limit to what they should be paid, given their relative commercial value to his. I got all that, it made sense, and I see why he said it. But this next bit is what has lingered with me, because he also said he doesn't do business in public, but only in private, like it should be. But by his public statements, from what he was saying about the commercial value, and there was a limit to what he would pay, he was already in effect setting some of the parameters for the negotiations to follow, and he was doing that all in public. Fast forward to the last couple of days. After hearing for weeks from Deontay Wilder that a unification fight was about who was the best, about legacy, the best champion, and it wasn't about money, that was a secondary sort of consideration. Wilder changes his tune. He says he deserves a 50-50 split of the loot, and there was a long justification to go with it of why that should be. David Higgins similarly demanding 40% of all the fight revenue for Parker, and Hearn, he has responded with some faux outrage of his own to both demands, and so on and so forth. It's been this back and forth ping pong every day, day after day. And the final straw for me though was, that really set me over the edge with this whole thing, was David Higgins talking about how Eddie Hearn's email must have been hacked because he received a joke of an offer which Joseph Parker had laughed at. So this whole thing, it's gone beyond a joke. I am sick of hearing about these guys daily firing off bottom lines to each other through the media about what each fighter will and won't accept. For me, this is really the bad part of boxing. The personalities and egos quibbling over money for fights. And sure, it's huge amounts of money and whatnot, but actually I don't care. Some of this does just come down to pure greed. And none of these guys are without blame. And I'm overhearing how much this fighter or that fighter out of these guys deserves because of this reason or that reason, and how it's fair for this and all this sort of thing. They all want more. They all don't want to give up money. So they are all being greedy in some way, all three. I imagine some of that, what I just said, is not going to sit well with some of you. But just take a step back. They all want more. They're all demanding more. They're all part of this. Do they really want the fight or not? Is it all just about money and boxing is secondary? Because that's what it feels like. And I imagine there are a number of you, like me, who are also getting increasingly tired of hearing these millionaire boxers, because they are millionaires, and they're millionaire promoters, bickering about money. It's not why I follow boxing. And I'd rather not keep talking about it ad nauseum, day after day, day after day. New angle, this angle. So until there's actually something to say, this is going to be my last video on this sort of thing for a little while, because I've kind of had my fill of it. And these guys, they run a very fine line of asking for what is fair, but also looking petty. I don't think it's unreasonable for these boxers and their promoters to try show us that they have some class, that they don't have to do everything through the media, that they don't have to try win a narrative. Why can't they actually just negotiate in private? If you really want to make the fight, why are you just sending an email? Why doesn't someone jump on a plane, get in the room, start hammering out a deal? Are they serious about making these fights or not? Remember, David Higgins and Eddie Hearn were talking about a few things in the media, and this sort of what kicked this off about splits a couple of weeks ago. And each is saying that the other made it up and all this sort of stuff. But the fact is, they could have shut it down. They could have shut it down, but they didn't. And Deontay Wilder's camp is in this as well. They are all using the media like a pawn to get their point across. But it's getting to the point where really they are looking a bit ridiculous. It's starting to feel like death by 1,000 cuts as one promoter or boxer, they try to shape the narrative publicly about how they need and deserve more. Grow up, guys. I've had a guts full, and why don't you just try to sort it out? We want these fights as fans, but this is the sort of stuff that turns fans off. Do we really need to hear about how many more millions you need? Just get the fight made. Be fair and reasonable to each other if you can. What do you make of this whole thing? I've had enough. How about you? Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.